Good morning, everyone, from Dunrovin Ranch in Lowell, Montana. I'm hopeful that you are on the chat. I am watching the chat, and the whole purpose of my being here today is to chat with you. And first of all, I would love to thank all of the chatters for sending me a beautiful card, a gift certificate for a tree, and this incredibly beautiful plaque that I'm going to put up in front of here so that you can see. Let me see if I'm getting it in the exact right spot. We'll have to kind of check and see to make sure you can see it all. But this plaque commemorates my beautiful Jewel. And I can't tell you how much I love this plaque. I don't know who designed it or how you put it all together. But, you're going to make me cry here momentarily. She really was the perfect ranch dog. I've had a lot of dogs in my life, and it seems like the right dog comes into my life at exactly the right time. And Jewel was exactly that dog. She was full of life, loved to do all of the things that were related to the ranch. She was totally tolerant of other dogs. She greeted people, wagged her tail. I never saw her be anything besides welcoming to either another dog or another person. She would tolerate children pulling her tail and pushing on her. She just never got upset with almost anything. I only twice saw her chase or growl at another dog, and that's when they would interfere with her game of fetch with me. That was her ball, and she didn't want other dogs chasing her ball. That was her territory entirely. So it was just, a wonderful thing to get this beautiful plaque, and I wanted to thank you very, very much for it. I also had initially thought I wanted to plant a tree for Jewel too, so you read my mind. In fact, on our way up from the beach, when we said goodbye to Jewel, I looked at my husband and I said, let's plant a tree in the spring for Jewel. And we talked about what kind of a tree that we would plant, and we both thought of a weeping willow. And she loved water, and weeping willows are kind of a water tree. And so we thought we would plant a weeping willow in her honor. And I've been thinking about where as well. And the thought has come to me along the bench near the swing, kind of between the swing and the bird feeders on the bench. We have a number of pine trees there, and I recognize that that's not where a willow tree would naturally grow, but I know that one would grow there because we have one not far from there. And I just thought it would allow me to go and sit on my swing and talk with Jewel. See, you're making me cry. Anyway, she was just a wonderful dog, and I really miss her terribly. I don't know if you've noticed that I've been going for walks recently. I've been feeling better. And I went for my first walk the other day down to her favorite swimming hole, and I have to say it made me cry. So I got to stop that, or I won't be able to go along any further. I also promised some of you that I would tell some stories about cougars. And I don't remember who it was that asked me about cougars, but I gave them a list of things to remind me. So if you're on, you need to get my list out. I will talk about an incident regarding cougars that did not involve me, but it involved the son of a friend of mine, the son of a person who was in the same swim team as my son. He was a 16-year-old boy, and he was a camp counselor at a local ski area called Marshall Mountain. And Marshall Mountain is just a little bit east of Missoula, just several miles east of Missoula, just outside of Missoula. And they used to have a children's camp there. And during a hike, during this children's camp, a cougar attacked 2 6-year-old children and actually got a hold of one. And the young camp counselor, a 16-year-old boy, was able to rescue both children. And in fact, I was just looking this up on Google because I wanted to get my facts straight, you know how it is. And I now see that this was reported in the Washington Post at the time. And this was in August of 1998. This was not long after we had returned to Montana from Alaska. And the interesting thing about this for our family was we were very acutely aware of bears. Bears are everywhere in Alaska, including brown bears or grizzly bears are, you know, right in Anchorage. We'd seen them a number of times right in Anchorage. You could encounter a grizzly bear out hiking at any time. But there were very few cougars. And so this was a little, surprising to us that we had, that a cougar just, right close to Missoula had actually taken this young child. And I'll just read you a little bit from the Washington Post, because this happened right after we got here. That there was one of the boys' name was Dante Swallow, and Joey Wynn were the 2 boys that were taken by the mountain lion. Anyway, it says Swallow, hiking with fellow day campers on Marshall Mountain outside Missoula, turned in time to see a 92-pound lion just before it leaped on him. The animal clamped its jaws around the blonde-haired boy's neck, wrapping its paws around his cheeks, according to Swallow's father. Its teeth barely missed the boy's jugular vein. A camp counselor, Aaron Hall, 16, kicked and punched the lion as it began to drag Swallow into the brush until it let go of the boy and left. So, yes, this was really a very dramatic incident in Missoula. Everybody remarked about it. So this was sort of my first encounter or even thought about cougars when we returned from Alaska to Montana. But it made me aware that cougars were indeed out there, and I had to pay attention. So I read up on cats, and I learned that cougars, or most cats, and this includes lions and tigers, that they almost always attack from the back. So people in India, where there are lots of lions or tigers, wear masks on the back facing backwards so that the tigers think that the person is looking both directions, that they're looking from their back as well as from their front. And that's actually proven to be quite effective. And one time that little piece of knowledge did come in very handy with my own experience. And this was during the 2013 forest fire that happened right across the river from Dunrovin. A big lightning strike hit right around 9 o'clock at night. And of course, it was still daylight at the time. It shook the house. I felt it shook the house. And I went out on the deck and I saw that the strike had hit the mountain behind us and it started a fire. So I called the fire department and I called 911 and let them know. And then I also called friends of mine who lived on the other side, but a little bit north of there, that I knew had horses. And I said, a fire has started and it's moving fast because the wind was really blowing hard. And And so I went to watch that fire, and the fire kept going all night long. And for about the first 6 hours, it was really scary because the wind was really whipping up the fire. And I remember being on the web camera. The only camera I had at the time was the Nest web camera. And maybe I'll show you some photos of this. Let me try to find a couple of photos that I took during this time. I think I can find them relatively easily. Give me a moment here and I'll find some. I remember that I was talking with a man from England who was one of the first people who watched Dunrovin, and I think some of you will remember his name. It's slipping my mind right at the moment, but he was with us for quite a while, and then Granddad something, I think was his name, and he was with us for quite a while, and then he suddenly disappeared. And I don't really know why he stopped watching us, but at any rate, here we go. I'm finding some photos here that I will bring up, and I will show you here momentarily. I'm going to share my screen and see if I can't all right. This is a collage of, oops, I messed up here. Hang on. I'm messing up here. Operator error all over the place, but you guys are on to me. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, I wanted to get it a little bit bigger. All right. So here it is. You should be able to Granddad Rufus. Thank you very much, Gabby. That's exactly who it was. It was Granddad Rufus. Anyway, here's the fire that was happening. And the top one is a photo from the Nest web camera. And you can see it was starting to take over much of the hill on the other side of the river from us. And the wind was all blowing north. But it had it started to blow west, it could easily have crossed the river. And it was a really bone dry summer. So I was concerned. So I gathered up all of my irrigation equipment to put it up and to put water on the house and all the buildings. I had a full, all of the accommodations were full. So I was worried about moving guests if I had to, but I first moved all the horses. I put them as far away from the fire over on the estate, on the school land, as I could. And then I kept going down to the fire to make sure that it was still headed north as opposed to west. But right at about 3 o'clock in the morning, it started heading west. And I got very nervous. In fact, I was just about to come back up and evacuate everybody out of the accommodations when in Montana, a weather front can be very abrupt. And so what happened was that the front moved and the wind stopped. It died down almost to nothing, and a soft rain started. So there was an abrupt weather change, and I felt tremendous relief. I was standing right where you see the dog on the beach watching that fire. And I turned to go back up to the house. And by the way, I had, the dogs weren't with me for some reason. This was just right after I'd gotten cola. I got cola in 2012. So this must have been 2013. But Cola and Jewel got kind of tired of me going back and forth, and they weren't with me. And I was very glad that they weren't, because I turned to go back up to the house, and I looked back at the fire again. And when I did, I saw these two big green eyes looking at me. And clearly the cougar had come across the river probably to escape the fire as well. And I looked at it, now think of it, this is 3 a.m. and I've got a bunch of people staying at the ranch, and I've moved all the horses, and it's been a very exciting night. I was talking with Granddad Rufus nearly the whole evening as we watched the fire together. And I thought, I've had enough excitement for the day. I don't need a cougar to, punctuate an already very dramatic day. So anyway, I remembered what I had read about cougars never attacking from the front. So I turned and I walked backwards up to home, keeping my eye on the cougar. And the truth is, he didn't really stalk me. He moved a little bit. I could see him moving, away from me, but I just didn't trust him because I wasn't sure what was on his mind. But I do think the fire had just pushed him across from the other side of the river, and he was no more interested in stalking me than I was of having him stalk me at the time. So that was one of the encounters that I've had with cougars right on the property. Another time, and this was before 2013, we heard all this ruckus out in the corral area. And this is before I had a ranch or anything like that, before I had Dunrovin. The only horses I had were Annie and Power, and Lonza was a foal. Sugar, which was a little horse, little pony, almost like Cool Dude. And I think that's the only horses I had. I may have had Monty. Denali was with us for sure. But anyway, there was all this ruckus going on out by the corrals, and I just couldn't figure out what was happening. They were just, all excited. And I went out there and I didn't see anything. And I went back in and I went to bed. Well, in the morning, there must have been a cougar around here chasing something, because the next morning I went out and a couple of the panels were broken, and I found cougar tracks in the paddock area where the cougar had come through and had clearly frightened the horses. So I, went, fixed the panels and everything, but I was really on alert at that point because I knew that the cougar had been around. So that was, I think, the first incident, and then I think the fire was the second incident. Oh no, there was another incident. This was up the South Fork of Lolo Creek, and I was riding my horse Power. Power and I did some endurance riding when I first moved to Montana. And endurance racing means going over long distances through the back country. There you have tracks that go from anywhere between 25 miles and up to 100 miles. And I did a lot of training with Power on all kinds of trails all over western Montana. It was a great way for me to get to know the trails, and that's part of why I created Dunrovin Ranch. Is I had such fun riding on all these trails, and I got to know the trails so well that I decided to share that with other people and create this small guest ranch. At any rate, on this particular day, Power and I were going up the South Fork of Lolo Creek. And the South Fork of Lolo Creek is just a gorgeous place. It starts in a really deep kind of a canyon, and it's one of the few places right locally here where you see a lot of cedar trees. It's very wet, and it's just a really narrow canyon with a beautiful creek, nice and cold and fast running. And the trail follows that canyon for quite a ways, and then another tiny little stream comes in to the north, and you follow that little stream and you go up to a mountain ridge. And at that mountain ridge, that was where in years past there had been a lot of logging. So it kind of opens up. The forest had been cut down, so it turns from a really thick forest into kind of an open area where the small trees were starting to grow back. but there were also a lot of bushes and things like that. It was really nice because you could see a long ways. And I liked this trail because it was very good and arduous, and it was a good place to train power because it was a lot of uphill. And then there was a really wonderful way to come back down that you could go fast. It wasn't steep. There was a way of using old logging roads that would allow you to come back over quite a distance with a lot of switchbacks, which meant you could go fast. At any rate, as I continued through this logged area, I was just, we were moving along at a fairly good speed because it gets a little bit less steep right there. And I wasn't thinking about anything besides just moving along with my horse. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, out of the bushes, whoosh, here comes this cougar right across our trail. I mean, he didn't look at us. He didn't stop. He didn't do anything. He just whoosh, right across. And luckily, Power was always very good about whatever animals he encountered in the backcountry. It didn't bother him at all. But the interesting thing is, about a half an hour later, I saw it again. And it came right across our trail going in a different direction, which made me wonder what it was doing. I mean, it was the strangest thing because often you have a sighting of a cougar, but to have two sightings and probably the same cougar, you know, maybe 20 minutes apart, and, you know, it was strange. At any rate, it wasn't frightening or anything. I kind of enjoyed seeing it, but I thought it was a very strange incident to see a cougar cross my path twice in one day. So that was maybe that was the second time that I saw a cougar. Does somebody have my list? I think I gave them a list of all my cougar sightings. Oh yeah, I'm thinking of another one. This was probably one of my most exciting rides ever. The Division of Tourism for the state of Montana often calls us and asks us to take people who write about travel for a horseback ride. We're close to Missoula, so it's not a big jaunt for them to go on a horseback ride with us. So I've done this a number of times where I've taken a group of writers on a ride. They end up writing about their trip to Western Montana and often include, you know, a description of our ride. And one of the exciting things, of course, is that we go across the river, which people love to do. Most people have never ridden across a river the size of the Bitterroot on a horse, and it gets them, you know, it's a real thrill. So I'm going to, just for the fun of it here, let's bring up I'll bring up the river camera. And I will start. If you can bring up both cameras. I don't know, James. Can you bring up the river camera while people are watching? I'm doing something on the fly here, but I thought from the side of our fence, and this is a really good thing. I ran into him yesterday while he was starting to do this. This debris comes every spring with the flood, and what happens is it starts piling up against the fence and it breaks the fence down. So several times James has had to go down there and fix the fence because the cattle were getting in onto our property. And the guy who is on the Big Boy toy, which is you know, a front end loader, and it's a really interesting toy. It's a tractor, you know, with a front end, or what do you call that, a bucket, some kind of thing. And you can see he gets in one seat to operate one part of it, and he gets in another seat to operate the other. Anyway, this is my friend Mark. He is my neighbor, and it's his stepfather-in-law that owns the cattle that you see over there. But Mark is the person who built my swings, my porch swings. He's just a really sweet guy. I really enjoy him. And he said he was going to go down there with his rake and weather to see if he can't get rid of some of the debris so that it doesn't just keep piling up, and we end up with, you know, pushing our fence down every year. So let me show you where we took our ride with these writers. And you'll recognize it because you've seen some of our riders go there. When we've had riders, not this summer, but previous summers. Okay, so you've seen us all go up on the hill here, on this trail right there that goes up the side of the mountain. And now we stop our trails right around at the top of the ridge there, right where you see this trail disappear. And the reason we do that is going up any higher is really steep, and it scares people to come down. I used to do it when I first started the ranch, I would take people all the way to the top. And there you can see kind of a little trail it starts right where this last tree, I'll see if I can come in on this tree. Let me see if I can show you this little trail. There's a bit of a ridge there. This tree right here, right there, there's a little trail that goes up the side of the mountain. And it's a trail that I actually made with my horses. And it's a trail that I used to use with power when I was training because it was so steep and it was really a good trail to train on. And I would take people up to the top of this ridge, and we would go up this ridge, and then there's even a higher ridge behind it, which you cannot see, okay? But as I went up to the top of the second ridge, which is just a little bit behind this ridge, I did not understand that there was a helicopter coming up from the other side. And because the ridge separated us, we really didn't hear the helicopter. Okay, so we get up to the top of the ridge, and as soon as we get up to the top, and I'm at the front of the line of these horses, and none of these people are riders, by the way. They're all writers, not riders. And the minute I get up to the top of the ridge, the helicopter crests the ridge at exactly the same time. And so you can imagine my horse comes face to face with this helicopter, which was pretty low. I mean, I could see the pilots easily, and they could certainly see me and the look of terror on my horse's face. So my horse did a 180 and started galloping down. And of course, all the other horses did a 180 and started galloping down. And galloping down a really steep hill is not a good idea, particularly if you don't know how to ride. So I had to gallop even faster to get down in front of all the horses now to stop them, because I had all these riders on this ride with me. And so here I was riding fast down this hill, and everybody was really excited, but I didn't lose anybody. You know, it was great because everybody stayed calm, and the horses stayed calm once I got back in front of them. But everybody's heart was beating really fast. And so I thought, well, normally I get people off up there and we enjoy the southern view because there's a gorgeous southern view of the valley up there. But I thought, we're not going to do that. And I'm just going to get people back. And I just tried to calm everybody down. Well, on the way down, and right about where you see the tree here, I would say right about this ridge, okay? As we're coming back down this really steep trail, there is a cougar that was probably scared by the same helicopter, and he was above us. And boy, let me tell you, horses don't like having cougars above them at all. Having a predator above a horse is really frightening to that horse. It's one of the worst things that you can encounter, in fact. And this cougar, so, we're right around here, right around maybe this tree. I'm going to focus on that tree, all right? And the cougar is right up here. okay, right up by these rocks. And we're suddenly all aware of this cougar, and the cougar is all aware of us. And again, the horses are already amped up from the helicopter incident, and I've just gotten everybody calmed down, including the riders, i.e. the riders. This was quite the trail ride. And it was all I could do to keep my own horse kind of under control. And when you guide horses, that is the most important thing you can do, is keep your own horse, the guide horse, under control. And that means you have to be under control. You really have to control all of your emotions. You can't get amped up, because if you get amped up, your horse is going to know that you're amped up, and it's not going to go well. It's just the way life is with horses. So I knew Power really well, and he knew and trusted me, and I was so glad to be on Power on that day, because he also was the undisputed leader of the herd. All of the horses felt safe near Power. And it's a really interesting herd dynamic. You know, we don't really have an undisputed leader anymore in our herd. We have several horses that are, you know, more dominant. But when Power was here, he was the leader, and everybody followed him, and everybody respected him, and he could calm everybody down. So by my keeping Power calm, I was able to keep everybody else calm. And this cougar, darn him, he followed us all the way down this trail. I mean, he followed us the whole way down this road. And let me see if I can bring it into view again. This trail here, all the way down to the flats. So he followed us as we came down to this. It's really a road, but it's not used very often, so it's more like a trail. And he followed us all the way down until we got to the flats. And then at the flats, and you've been on this, I do believe, Gabby. I think you went with me up there one time. I'm not sure, but I think you did. Then you come through a bunch of bushes, and right at about the bushes, he stayed near the mountains, and we came down on this flat area, and then we came back across the river. Well, you can imagine how all of these people felt, all of these riders. Everybody was, so amped. 2 river crossings, which was completely new to them, and a lot of people get really nervous when they have a river crossing. And then the helicopter galloping downhill incident, and then the cougar incident. And then we had to cross the river again. And I mean to tell you, it was funny to me, but not to them. I mean, they were literally shaking when they got off their horse. I mean, it was amazing. And yes, they did have plenty to write about. And I was afraid that it would all come off very bad for Dunrovin Ranch, because, I mean, it was way over the top exciting. But I only saw a couple of the articles that resulted from that. And they did talk about what an exciting ride it was, but they didn't do it in a bad way. So I was greatly relieved about that. So I'm going to go back up to my list that somebody very nicely put into the chat room for me. And okay, so I've talked about the horses running through the fences, and I talked about the wild ride with the riders, and I talked about Marshall Mountain Ski Area, and I talked about the fire across the river. And let's see, the Kit Fox and the this happened while Kelly was here. And this is Kelly should be telling this story, because I didn't see the cougar. She did. And several years ago we had this family of foxes that took up residence on our neighbor's property. I'm sure you all remember. These guys would come beneath the osprey's nest early in the morning, because we had those 2 really boisterous chicks. I think it was Honor and Glory that were always flipping fish over the side of the nest, and this was Hal at the time. Hal would bring a fish early in the morning, and they'd fight so that it would just drop down in the arena. And the foxes got wise to this, and I think one of you, I think it might have been I Love, got a recording of the foxes basically lined up under the osprey's nest waiting for fish to fall. It was just hysterical. And at one time during that summer, Kelly, I'm pretty sure it was Kelly, it might have been one of the other wranglers, but I'm pretty sure it was Kelly, said that they had seen a cougar grab one of the kits and disappear across the south pasture. I didn't see that. The horses running through the fence, Marshall Mountain, the wild ride, the fire, the fox, and the South Fork of Lolo Creek. So I think that's all of my cougar tales. If you have any questions or you want me to talk about anything else, just put them in the chat here. I'm watching the chat, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. I don't get off on and do this very much. I'd be happy to do this more if this is something you'd like me to. I think it was, what was her name, I Love? It was Aaron. No, down to Texas too. I think that they met up down there. I'm not exactly sure. But yes. Okay, Celia, you want me to talk about Annie and the candy? Oh boy, this is a good story. This is a birthday story. This is a story still in grade school, so it was either in the 7th or 8th grade, something like that, and give out to the pasture and give horses treats. And this was when Annie was a young horse, and Annie is a very assertive, aggressive horse. I'm pretty sure she had Lonza, but I'm not 100% sure. It might have been before Lonza was born. In fact, now that I think back on it, it was before Lonza was born. So it was really early on when, after we had, sort of set up a ranch here. And I had Sugar, and I had Denali and Power. So those were the only horses at that point. Sugar, Annie, Denali, and Power. And I took all these 8th graders or 7th or 8th graders out to the field, and we were going to feed them treats. And, I was kind of new to having a whole herd of horses all together. And I now know this is a really stupid thing to do, but it is what I did. Anyway, I had these treats, and everybody was happy to get these treats, of course. Sugar was very polite, Power was polite, Denali was polite, but Annie was not. Annie got really irritated if she wasn't the one getting the first bit of candy. And she got so angry. She had a little snit, and she went through my fence twice. And the second time that she did, she broke the top rail, and she rolled over. She did a 360 roll right over the top rail of one of my fences. And I thought for sure she had hurt herself, but she didn't. I don't know why she didn't, but what a horse. My goodness, what a horse. And it was because I had shooed her away. I had gotten a whip because she was so aggressive about getting these treats. And I thought she was getting dangerous with my, these young kids. And I needed to get her away. So I got my whip out and shooed her away while I left the other horses and the kids together. And she just had a complete snit. And it really told me something about her. It made me realize what an aggressive horse she really was. And that's in part why I bought her originally. She was going to be my endurance horse. And because she was so assertive and so aggressive, she was really determined. And that makes a really good endurance horse. Somebody who, just won't give up, just, really goes. And I think, I have 1,000 Annie stories. I know I've told you before that she loved the water. I've never been on a horse that loved the water as much as Annie. And before I had to stop riding her because she fell 3 times with me, and I had her knee operated on twice. Yeah, the vet was afraid of her, Celia. The vet hated her. I mean, she didn't put up with much of anything. I mean, she was just incredible. She always behaved me, and Jamie got to like her pretty well. And as she got older, she got better. In fact, after she had Lonza, she got a little bit better. But she was a very aggressive horse. But the thing I remember most about riding Annie were a couple of things. In the mountains, if she decided she didn't want to do something, you couldn't force her. You had to make her think it was her idea. You had to kind of look things over, and you had to kind of nudge her this way and nudge her that way, and kind of, make her think that it was her idea to go ahead, to move on. She was very stubborn. But when she moved on, she really moved on. And I can remember riding in the Bitterroot River with her. And it was just phenomenal because she was like a tugboat. She'd go right upriver. And I mean, the water would be over her shoulders and over my lap. And she would just be, loving every minute of it. She wasn't actually swimming, although I did take her swimming a couple times in a big spring across the river we called Dunrovin. She loved every part of it. And, I'm sure some of you during the time that she was here saw her playing in the troughs. She'd get her feet in there and throw water all over the place. Yeah, Miss Gertie's sister, that's exactly right. Both have attitudes. She had a real attitude. People say you shouldn't ride a mare unless you're willing to put up with attitude. And that's probably right. The mares I've had, both have had attitudes for sure. I haven't had that many mares. I've ridden other mares, but both Annie and her daughter Lonza have attitudes for sure. Well, let's see. It's 11:45, so I've been at this for 45 minutes. One of my labs used to do that in the big bucket of water. Yes, Gabby, like the labs. Jewel loved the river. Jewel, you see, you're reminding me of Jewel again. And again, I just want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for being here with me and for sticking with us all these years and for all the fun that we've had and for this beautiful, beautiful plaque that, I will put up in my office, and that will help me remember my beautiful Jewel. I just really love this plaque. It was a very, very nice gift, and I want to thank you for it. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and let me know if you'd like me to come on again and tell you some crazy stories of living here at Dunrovin. Until then, take care. Have a very safe Thanksgiving next week, and I will get on again if you want me to. Thank you very much. Goodbye.